I am Genghis Khan, born with the name Temujin, and I invite you to hear my tale of triumph and tragedy. My story begins on the cold Mongolian steppe, where fierce winds shaped my spirit before I could even hold a bow. In this vast land of endless grass and dangerous warlords, I learned at a young age to be cunning, fearless, and unbreakable. It was not an easy start. My family was abandoned by our own people, left to starve. Yet, fate had other plans for me. The boy who once trembled from hunger would grow to conquer entire kingdoms. In my earliest memories, every shadow stretched long across the grassland, reminding me that danger lurked everywhere. My father, Yasuge, was poisoned by rivals when I was still a child. Suddenly, I found myself the head of a vulnerable household, forced to hunt small animals just to survive. I remember the icy sting of the wind on my cheeks and the rumble of hunger in my belly. Still, I refused to yield. Hardship was my constant companion, teaching me lessons in fortitude that no book could provide. I grew up fast, forging resilience in the fires of adversity. Even before uniting the Mongols, I had to overcome betrayal within my own circle. My half-brother Begtur challenged my authority at every turn. When words failed, violence ended our family feud. Such desperate acts haunted me, yet they also reminded me that strength sometimes demanded ruthless choices. For the Mongols, weakness was not an option. We lived in a harsh environment where only the strong survived. My anger and sorrow over losing my father fueled my determination. Vengeance became my ally, shaping my path toward the man I would become. Relentless, driven, and prepared to face any foe. My name began to spread across the steppe as I forged alliances with powerful warlords. But victory did not come easily. There were times I was captured, placed in a yoke like a common animal, taunted by enemies who believed they had broken my spirit. They did not realize that, much like tempered steel, I only grew stronger when tested. Those humiliations fueled my desire to break my chains, both literal and symbolic. Mongol unity was my dream. Where others saw scattered clans, I saw a single nation waiting to rise. No matter how many times I fell, I rose again. Bit by bit, I gained followers, impressed by my vision of a united Mongol people. I offered them hope, security, and spoils of war, forging a bond that transcended old feuds. My unwavering loyalty to my allies created a fierce sense of brotherhood among us. They called me Temujin no longer, but Genghis Khan, universal ruler. It was both an honor and a burden, for I now carried the dreams of my people on my shoulders. Everything in my life led to this, from a starving boy on the steppe to the great Khan who would shake the world. At first, our battlefield was the Mongolian steppe itself. My men fought bravely, riding swift horses and unleashing deadly arrows that rained upon our foes. We honed tactics that used mobility, discipline, and shock to our advantage. We struck quickly, disappearing into the landscape as ghostly riders. Fear soon traveled ahead of my army, whispering into the ears of rival tribes. They knew that if they opposed me, they would be crushed. If they joined me, they could share in glory. In those early days, I realized terror could be as potent a weapon as any bow or sword. When the Mongol tribes were finally united, I set my sights far beyond our homeland. My ambition was unstoppable, fueled by the memory of my own suffering and the desire to shape history. I had once been a nobody in a world that demanded greatness. Now, entire cities trembled at the mention of my name. I carried a deep hunger for more, not just wealth or territory, but the undying legacy that would live beyond my mortal life. The steppe, for all its beauty, felt too small for my ambition. Destiny called me to ride further, to test my might everywhere. For my first major foreign conquest, I turned toward the Chinese dynasties, beginning with the Jin in the north. Their fortified cities were marvels of engineering, but the Mongols adapted swiftly. We learned siege warfare from skilled advisors, built massive catapults, and hammered those stone walls until they cracked. My riders encircled fortresses, cutting off supplies and instilling fear in all corners. The battles were fierce, with cunning tactics meeting desperate defenses. Soon, the Jin Empire fell to my unrelenting assault. Victory brought power and riches, yet it also stoked the fire of my ambition, pushing me toward my next campaign. Beneath my command, the Mongol Empire expanded until it stretched from the Sea of Japan to the edges of Europe. My generals and I shattered armies that had never considered us a threat. The once mighty empires learned to fear the thunder of our hooves. Everywhere we went, stories of bloodshed and devastation followed. I will not deny the brutality. Conquest has never been gentle. However, I believed in discipline and structure. If a city resisted, we showed no mercy. If it surrendered, we often spared lives and welcomed them into our growing empire. War was savage, but it had purpose. One of my most famous campaigns was against the Khwarezmian Empire, where I faced Shah Muhammad II. Anger boiled in my veins when one of my trading caravans was attacked and my men slaughtered. With unwavering resolve, I ordered a massive retaliation. We stormed through cities like Bukhara, Samarkand, and Urgench. My soldiers fought with terrifying precision, leaving a trail of ruin to remind the world of my power. Witnessing that devastation was sobering, even for me. Yet I believed that a harsh lesson would ensure no one dared challenge the Mongols again. It was victory stained with blood. Sometimes, I still hear the screams of the fallen in my dreams. My path was paved with countless lives, both enemy and ally. Yet I pressed on, convinced that destiny itself had chosen me to forge a new order. In my heart, I held a vision of a realm without petty squabbles, one where trade flowed, ideas traveled, and people lived under the rule of law. So I established the Yasa Code to bring structure to chaos. To many, this dream might seem cruel, but to me, it was a path towards stability in a world drenched in war and betrayal. Conquest does not rest. My armies pushed deeper into Western lands, sending scouts and raiders far across deserts and mountains. Our horses were unstoppable, carrying us through burning sands and frigid peaks alike. My generals, such as Subutai and Jebe, were brilliant strategists who faced every test with cunning. I took pride in their victories, yet I knew these conquests would never be enough to satisfy me. Every nation we subdued magnified my hunger to see where our reach could end. I wanted to be more than just a conqueror. I wanted to be the eternal legend whose name shook the earth. Yet my life was not all battlefield glory. My family remained a crucial part of my world. I had multiple wives and numerous children, and with them came different loyalties and tensions. While I loved them in my own way, I was often torn between fatherly affection and the demands of an empire. My sons grew up with power and privilege I had never known. But they also faced incredible expectations, each wanting to prove himself worthy. The complexities of ruling extended to my household, where I had to balance trust, discipline, and ambition, just as I did among my armies. As I grew older, I began to sense my own mortality. So much had been achieved, yet still more needed doing. My empire was vast, but I knew it needed strong foundations to endure. I started planning for a succession that would keep the empire united. I worried about the future. Would my sons carry on my vision, or would they tear each other apart? Ruling an empire is more than winning battles. It is about leaving the world stronger than you found it. And though I was Genghis Khan, even I could not conquer time. It comes for us all. Let me bring you to the year of my final campaign. My eyes were still sharp with ambition, though my body sometimes betrayed me with pain. Some say I was around 65 years old, though we Mongols did not track birthdays as precisely as city dwellers. Still, my hair had silver strands, a reminder that no warrior remains forever young. In 1227, I led my forces against the Tangut, also known as the Shishia. They had once submitted to me, but they defied my rule again. I marched upon them, determined to punish their treachery and secure my empire's borders. We rode through unforgiving terrain, crossing rocky paths and scorching deserts to reach Tangut lands. Supplies were not easy to come by, but my soldiers were well trained for harsh conditions. My strategy was to swiftly overpower their defenses and force them to surrender. The Tangut, however, did not fall as easily as before. They had fortified their cities and prepared for our arrival. Battles were grueling, and I found my temper rising. I demanded total victory. My generals advised caution, but my pride would not allow me to show mercy. The stage was set for one final, fateful struggle. The official records say little about the exact details of my final days. But let me tell you what I recall. I felt a burning inside me, something that drove me forward even when my body begged for rest. Perhaps it was a fever from a wound or an illness creeping through my veins. Some whisper that I fell from a horse, a humiliating fate for a man who had built his empire on horseback. Others say I took an arrow in battle. Rumors grew, but the truth remains shrouded in the dust of the steppe. I will offer you my version. I remember the night air was cold against my sweat-soaked skin. We were near the Tangut capital, and I insisted on being at the front. My advisors urged me to rest. They saw the pained expression on my face, the fatigue in my bones, but they knew better than to question me openly. Despite my aches, I refused to show weakness. By then, I suspected that something dark was growing inside me. Each morning, I awoke feeling more drained. Yet a warrior's pride does not surrender easily. I believed I could fight both the Tangut and my own failing health. On one morning ride, my horse suddenly reared, startled by a flash of lightning across the sky. I was caught off guard and thrown hard to the ground. Pain exploded in my chest, and for a moment, the world spun. My soldiers rushed to help, but I spat away their pity. I forced myself back to my feet, ignoring the throbbing ache, yet my breath came in ragged gasps. My ribs felt bruised, if not broken. Even so, I refused to abandon my campaign. "Press on," I commanded, and so we did, though fate had already begun to seal my end. I will never forget the day my fever first robbed me of consciousness. We were stationed outside a Tangut fortress, preparing for a siege. The midday sun was relentless, my vision blurred, and my limbs shook as though I were a trembling child again. I stumbled into my tent, collapsing onto the furs. Darkness swallowed me. When I finally opened my eyes, my closest advisors huddled around, whispering in hushed tones. The look in their eyes was a reflection of the panic I felt in my own heart. For the first time, Genghis Khan confronted the prospect of his mortality. Still, I tried to rally. I forced myself up, demanding to lead the next assault. We battered the fortress walls, each blow from our catapults shaking the city's defenses. My men roared with confidence, but my own strength waned. Every swing of my sword felt heavier, and my breathing grew labored. Pride pushed me forward, ignoring the signals my body screamed. Yes, I was Genghis Khan, the unstoppable conqueror. But no man, no matter how fearsome, can outfight the inevitability of age and injury forever. Deep down, I knew my final hour was creeping closer, no matter how fiercely I resisted. The Tangut capital eventually fell to our relentless assault. We seized victory, but inside my tent, I fought a private battle that I could not win with swords or arrows. My fever grew worse, lancing through my head and chest like blades. Food lost its taste, and water offered no relief. My body burned, yet I shivered as though trapped in a winter storm. A cough racked my lungs, leaving me breathless. Concerned faces hovered around me. Despite the triumphant cheers of my army outside, I could sense the hush in my camp. Their Khan was mortal, after all. In moments of delirium, I saw my past flash like thunder and lightning. I remembered the taste of wild onions during those desperate boyhood days. I recalled the sweet rush of victory when I was named Genghis Khan. Memories of the great steppe, of hunts and battles, mingled with regrets about lives lost, alliances broken, and enemies crushed. My soul wrestled with itself, torn between pride in what I had built and sorrow for the devastation I had wrought. My family's faces flickered in my mind, my wives, my sons, my beloved daughters. I knew time was slipping through my fingers. In whispers, I gave orders to my most trusted generals. The campaign against the Tangut was done, our victory sealed. I wanted them to prepare for a future without me. My mind still burned with ambitions, but my body would no longer heed my commands. Each breath felt like a battle in itself. I instructed them to ensure the empire's stability, urging them to remain united. I had seen how ambition could tear families apart, and I feared what might follow my final breath. My heart pounded with urgency, yet my voice wavered, betraying the weakness creeping through my veins. Some say my last orders included demands for secrecy. Legend claims that those who buried me slaughtered anyone who saw the funeral procession, ensuring my grave would remain hidden. I desired rest in an unmarked grave somewhere in Mongolia, free from disturbance or revenge. The truth is, I wanted to return to the land that had shaped me, where the sky stretched endlessly and the wind carried the whispers of ancient spirits. I did not crave a grand tomb. I only wished for peace in death, having spent my entire life in war. Though rumors swirl, the exact burial site remains unknown. My final days in that Tangut encampment were filled with both triumph and agony. My attendants anointed my brow with cool water, hoping to ease the fever that raged inside me. My vision dimmed, and I struggled to speak. Each word was a mountain to climb. In fleeting moments of clarity, I reminded everyone that the Mongol Empire must continue to stand as one. My eyes glazed with tears, not from fear, but from the raw intensity of life's final confrontation. I had guided armies across continents, but now stood helpless before the unstoppable march of time and frailty. My death was not glorious on a battlefield against a mighty foe. Instead, it was quiet, almost anticlimactic, given the thunderous legend of my life. Some might think a grand conqueror should die in a blaze of arrows and swords, but fate chose a different end for me. In the hush of a campaign tent, my body gave out. The mighty Genghis Khan was undone by injury, infection, or possibly both. As the final darkness gathered, I felt the familiar rush of the steppe wind one last time, as if the spirits of my ancestors were calling me home. There are countless stories about how I died. Some claim a Tangut princess took my life in revenge for the destruction of her people. Others insist that a well-aimed arrow found its mark. Then there are rumors of poison or a mysterious plague. Yet the simplest explanation often holds the most truth. I was an aging warrior who pushed my body beyond its limits. A final campaign, a fall from a horse, a fever, any or all of these might have spelled my end. The exact details mattered less to me than the fate of the empire I left behind. As I breathed my last, I sensed the profound silence that comes only in the absence of life's clamoring. The men around me struggled to maintain composure. Some bit their lips to stifle sobs. Others knelt in stoic reverence. My heartbeat, once so fierce, fluttered like a bird trapped in a cage. Everything I had built, everything I had fought for, balanced on the edge of a blade. Yet, in that final moment, I found a strange sense of peace. I had carved my story across continents and shaped the world's destiny. What more could a warrior ask for? Word of my passing was guarded with intense secrecy. My generals feared that enemies might exploit the news to strike at a weakened empire. So they continued the campaign, displaying my banner as if I were still among them. Within my tent, skilled attendants began the solemn task of preserving my body for its long journey back to the Mongolian homeland. The hush that followed was like the lull after a storm, a quiet moment when you realize how much was taken and how much still remains. Though I was gone, my legend echoed in every corner of the army's camp. Once the Tangut were thoroughly subdued, a secret procession carried my body north. They traveled primarily at night to avoid detection, crossing deserts and rivers in pursuit of my final resting place. Some say thousands of horses trampled the earth to disguise where I would be buried. Others whisper that rivers were redirected to flow over my grave. My people wanted to ensure that no one would disturb Genghis Khan's eternal slumber. Though the stories grow fanciful, they share a single truth. My people's devotion was as formidable as my empire. In death, they guarded me with the same ferocity. My children, including my successors, Ogadai, Chagatai, Tolui, and Jochi, wrestled with the monumental task of keeping the empire united. Feuds flared, territories needed governance, and new battles awaited. My passing ignited concerns that the empire might fracture, for even a mighty oak can split once its trunk is gone. But I had laid foundations to endure beyond my lifetime. I had created a structured administration, a codified law, and a network of trusted generals. It would not be easy, but I hoped that my heirs would find a way to continue the legacy and avoid tearing each other apart. From beyond the grave, I watched as my name became legend. People far and wide used it to conjure fear or admiration. The Silk Road flourished under Mongol rule, bringing distant lands closer together than ever before. Though much blood had been spilled, doors to trade, culture, and innovation opened across Asia and Europe. My empire influenced how future rulers administered their realms, implementing methods of governance that even my fiercest enemies came to respect. For better or worse, I left a legacy that reshaped the world's political and cultural landscape in ways no other conqueror had done before. Looking back on the stories told about me, I see the weight of my deeds. Some hail me as the father of the Mongols, the unifier who ended tribal warfare. Others condemn me as a ruthless tyrant who brought destruction to countless cities. Both are correct in their own way. War is never gentle, and I took the path of conquest without hesitation. But within that conquest, I established laws that promoted stability, championed religious tolerance, and valued merit above noble birth. I was cruel to those who resisted, but unexpectedly generous to those who served loyally. My legacy is a paradox. Even now, people debate my final resting place. Scientists and explorers have scoured the Mongolian steppes, searching for the tomb of Genghis Khan. They dream of the treasures that might lie buried with me, a wealth of gold, armor, and precious relics from conquered lands. But many Mongolians believe that disturbing my grave would bring misfortune, violating the sacred promise of secrecy. So the location remains undiscovered, or at least unconfirmed. In this mystery I live on, my spirit roaming the same endless fields where I once rode as a young boy, forging my destiny under the eternal blue sky. Some modern storytellers paint me as a barbarian who reveled in destruction. Others see a visionary leader who laid the groundwork for the modern world. Truth lies somewhere between these extremes. My empire was a force of both annihilation and creation. We demolished fortresses, but also connected cities through trade routes and cultural exchange. We punished enemies ferociously, yet opened doors for foreign merchants and scholars. It is this complexity that keeps my memory alive in history's consciousness. Whether praised or damned, Genghis Khan remains impossible to ignore, precisely because my story defies simple explanation. In life, I was a man of contradictions. I was fierce but also pragmatic, superstitious yet strategic, merciless to rebels but loyal to allies. I believe that unity under a single iron rule would end the endless tribal conflicts that plagued our people. Perhaps my dream demanded too heavy a price, and countless souls paid it in blood. Even so, I stand by the necessity of forging that unity. Without my iron grip, the Mongols might have remained scattered tribes, at the mercy of stronger empires. Instead, we carved our names into history. My entire life was a gamble, and I won. Let me tell you a secret. There were nights when I doubted my path. War weighs on the soul, no matter how justified you believe it to be. I sometimes questioned the cruelty of our campaigns. But each time, I remembered the betrayals I endured as a boy, my father's poisoning, and the heartbreak of being cast aside by my own clan. Those memories fanned the flames of vengeance in my heart. I vowed never to be the one who knelt. I would stand above all others, forging a new reality where no child would suffer as I had. That was my purpose. After my death, the Mongol Empire continued to grow under my descendants, stretching into Russia, Eastern Europe, and deeper into the Middle East. Cities like Baghdad would later face devastation under my grandson, Hulagu. Yet new trade routes also blossomed, and a cultural tapestry emerged under the Pax Mongolica. My empire was a double-edged sword, a harbinger of destruction and a catalyst for unparalleled global connection. Historians would label it as the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever seen. While I never lived to witness its fullest extent, I am proud that my spark ignited such a blazing legacy. As this world continued to evolve, my name became a symbol of unstoppable might. Countless leaders studied my tactics, seeking to emulate or defend against them. My emphasis on loyalty, discipline, and adaptability resonated even centuries later. People write about me, debate me, and invoke my memory when discussing power, ambition, and brutality. Time might dull certain details, but the echoes of my story remain sharp. Even in death, my presence looms over the pages of history. Greatness always casts a long shadow. For many, my shadow remains both terrifying and awe-inspiring, a complex monument to humanity's capacity for extremes. Do I regret anything? Regret is an indulgence I rarely allowed myself in life. If I faltered, I could lose everything. Yet in the stillness of the afterlife, I have the luxury to reflect. The countless lives lost, the cities razed, the cultures uprooted, these remain heavy on my spirit. However, I also remember how the Mongol Empire laid roads for commerce and exchange that never existed before, how it dismantled oppressive feudal structures in some places, and how it championed religious freedoms. My actions were a paradox of creation and destruction. If I had to live it again, would I change anything? Perhaps I might have found a gentler way, but the world I knew was harsh, and only ruthless strength commanded respect. Mercy was often taken for weakness, leading to betrayal. So I became a storm that swept across nations. In this sense, I was a product of my time, shaped by the cruelty I witnessed as a child. Power was my shield, and conquest was my language. Still, I cannot deny that a part of me longed for a simpler life, one without the weight of empires on my shoulders, just the wide-open steppe and a loyal horse beneath me. Now, as a voice from beyond, I invite you to see my life not in black or white, but in shades of stormy gray. If my words evoke fear, awe, disgust, or admiration, then you are catching a glimpse of the complex tapestry I wove. Understand that I did not act in a vacuum. My era was brutal, with kingdoms eager to devour each other. I simply learned to devour first. In the end, though, even the fiercest among us bow to death's command. My story is a testament to the unstoppable force of ambition and the unavoidable truth of mortality. To this day, when people hear the name Genghis Khan, they conjure images of horseback armies and burning cities. But few realize the cunning statesman behind the warrior image, how I navigated alliances, valued talent over birthright, and insisted on swift communication across thousands of miles. We built yam stations for dispatch riders, letting messages traverse the empire at unheard-of speeds. In battle, we used feigned retreats, encirclements, and psychological warfare. Every victory was as much about strategy as raw power. I was always a student of war, learning from each triumph and defeat and adapting to any challenge. When the final chapter of my life came, I was not simply an unstoppable conqueror. I was also a tired old man wrestling with the weight of an empire and the fragile threads of my own lineage. I had fathered countless children, forged alliances, and shattered kingdoms. But in that Tangut campaign, I could no longer ignore the whispers of mortality. My body, so long my greatest weapon, betrayed me. Perhaps it was fitting that after all my triumphs, the end arrived in a humble tent, far from any grand throne. I left this world as I entered it, under an open sky. If my death teaches you anything, let it be the price of ambition. Achieving greatness often demands sacrifices, not just from oneself, but from entire populations. War may bring glory, but it also sows loss and suffering that can echo for generations. Do I expect forgiveness for what I did? Perhaps not. But I do ask that you see the full scope of my legacy, both the devastation and the advancements, both the terror and the unity. There is no single story that captures all of Genghis Khan, just as there is no single path to shaping history. In the centuries since my passing, many rulers have tried to replicate my success, but few have matched the scale of my feats. My empire at its height dwarfed those of Alexander and Caesar. Yet I was neither saint nor simple-minded warlord. I lived in a world that demanded harsh choices, and once I set forth on the path of conquest, the momentum became unstoppable. My name, Genghis Khan, still carries a weight that transcends borders and centuries. Call me a monster or call me a genius. Either way, my story endures, reminding humanity of the heights and depths of power. So you ask, how did I die? I died like any mortal, betrayed by my aging flesh and the toll of a life lived in constant battle. Whether it was a fall, a fever, or a wound, the result remained the same. My empire paused to mourn the great Khan, even as they concealed my death for tactical advantage. My bones, if they still lie hidden under Mongolian soil, mark the final rest of a conqueror who once claimed the world as his battlefield. In the end, even Genghis Khan could not conquer the silent stillness of the grave. But do not mourn me for too long. My life burned bright, changing the course of nations. I achieved what few even dare to dream, uniting a fractured land and extending my rule across deserts, mountains, and oceans. The price was paid in blood, but the results shaped civilizations. In the quiet after death, I hear the echoes of hooves thundering across the steppe, the roar of battle, and the cries of victory. My tale is etched into the annals of history, a reminder that even the lowliest child in the grasslands can rise to dominate empires. And so I bid you farewell. This is the story of how I, Genghis Khan, Temujin of the Borjigin clan, met my end. My life was a tempest, but even the fiercest storm must subside. In death, I found an end to my battles, but my legend lives on, whispering through time. Remember me as a conqueror, a unifier, a terror, a visionary, however you will. My soul gallops across the eternal steppe, unburdened by the chains of mortality. If my words have left a mark on your heart, then my spirit rides on. I was Genghis Khan, conqueror of the world.